right. Hello, everyone. Welcome back for the Doers podcast. I am Sayda, your host, and I'm back with the incomparable Janice Satoyama.
Hi, Sayda.
You
What a
are
fabulous
incomparable. Accept
word, though.
it.
I'm like
Accept it.
incomparable.
Oh my goodness. It is so good to be back. We were just amazed that it has been 2 years since the last For the Doers podcast. And time flies. I cannot believe that was 2 years ago. And all of the things that have happened since then. And yeah, we are back. A lot has changed in our lives, I think, that and this is a reason why we're here. We're talking about, we started with For the Doer, speaking, and I'll speak a little bit more about the original series below a little bit later. We had a lot of great conversations about mental health, which is a huge passion of mine. And I know of Janice's also, that she also feels the same way about having this conversation to try to remove that stigma from talking about mental health.
Well,
And
it penetrates all areas of your
yeah,
life. So there's no compartmentalizing anything that's going on in your mind. There's no putting it to the side and ignoring it because it will manifest in your body or it will rear its ugly head somewhere else.
and that's literally why we're here. A lot of things happened in the last couple of years, professionally, personally, a lot of, I guess we can talk about the difference between then and now. So I'm still looking at some conversations that we had with our wonderful friend Julia, for example, about burnout. We had a couple of episodes talking about that and other issues that come up when you're a professional who really wants to be authentic and live the way you want to live for yourself. And those conversations got deep, and I think from that, in my personal experience, things got deeper for me right after we started the podcast. Actually, before we started the podcast, I think one of the reasons that For the Doers came about was I was really struggling with my mental health through caring for my aging dad and also working a lot during the pandemic, throughout. It was really hard. And even at that time, Janice and I were just talking about why we have these conversations, because it's like, it's not just me. And for example, with caring for aging parents, that's a lot of us right now. That is a lot of us who are going through this. I'm grateful that I don't have children at this time, because it was so much for me. Then I had to come to terms with being a survivor of sexual abuse. It was something that, and it's funny because we're sitting here for the doers. You want to live your life authentically and not settle for less. And I got exactly what I was bargaining for from God, the universe, because I was so committed to wanting to live that life that is informed by me, not just society, not just what my parents wanted. And I really got what way more than I bargained for, having to come to terms with the fact that I was a victim as a kid. Between the ages of 7 and 12, I was abused by 6 different people. And I could not admit it to myself. I was telling a friend that yesterday. You tell yourself these stories in your head, and what you were saying, you compartmentalize things. But if it's part of you, you cannot compartmentalize. So I was so married to being that strong person for everyone that I couldn't come to terms with the fact that I was incredibly weak and incredibly vulnerable at some point and was taken advantage of at that time. And I was also sexually assaulted when I was 17. And yet another thing, I always had a lot of grace for other people, but I couldn't even admit it to myself. And finally, I got to the point once again where I wasn't dealing with something. And then your brain says, guess what? I'm not going past this. I'm not. So I had to get help. I had to get professional help. I'm still getting professional help. Now I'm dealing with CPTSD and PTSD, incredible. I don't sleep. Awful nightmares and things like that. But I am now incredibly grateful for all of the pain because I'm starting to see the end of it. And I'm also seeing that talking about these things is how I can also be of service to other people, to my community, to people who don't feel comfortable. I didn't feel comfortable talking about those things and dealing with those things because once you take that mask off, your body's like, there's no way I'm going back to that. I'm not going back to that space because you can't. You've already grown. It's like a crab. You've already grown out of that little shell. And now comes the hard part. It's like, how am I going to live with all of that?
Well, first and foremost, thank you for trusting this space to even share that because that is, I'm so sorry that you went through that. And that's not something that anybody should have to go through. And just your ability to come out with the grace and the open door policy about having a conversation is so incredibly beautiful and so incredibly touching and hard because I feel like it's like you rip open a scab and you're like, well, here it is. Like this is me in my rawest form. This is all the stuff I've been through. And it's a lot. It's such a huge, I feel like it held such space in your body that I hope in my heart of hearts that you feel liberated to a certain degree where you're like, I no longer, you like you say, you're like, I took off the mask. I hope you feel that now you can be seen for everything positive you want to put out into the world.
Yeah, whew, I'm getting a little emotional. I didn't expect that. I feel a freedom, to be honest, that I've never felt before because I think what keeps us stuck is not wanting to let other people down, maybe. When we were talking about For the Doers, when we first started that, it was always my dream to create this type of space. I didn't think it would be in this way. But I think that we keep ourselves in that space because it's so much easier than what the all this literal crap I just went through and I'm still going through. It would have been so much easier to just keep trying to hide it. And yeah, I'm gonna have some nervous breakdowns and let me just patch that back up and keep trying. No, I would, who knows what would happen if I kept trying to hide. Once you come to terms, you can't hide. And then that's the hard part. Like I said, it's the hard part of like, I'm going to live with this now. And you have to decide, am I going to be the victim or the survivor who's driving? I'm driving. I survived. And now it's funny because now I am so much more open to asking for help because I was too strong to ask for help. But now I think about the choices that I've made in my life and how being a victim impacted those choices and how it got me to where I am. I don't feel like I had a choice to wear the mask or not because again, it just came up from inside me and said, we're all these things that you thought you forgot. We're about to deal with this. So I feel like I was chosen in a way, not sure by who, but I'd like to. But I'm grateful now that I think through the worst of it, I'm incredibly grateful because now it's like I have nothing to hide. Absolutely nothing to hide. Amazing feeling of just like, I'm open. This is me. Good parts and bad parts. And it also makes me feel better about myself because I know myself now. That's part of my work. And coming to terms with that darkness that was in my mind, part of me was necessary for me to become a whole person. And I think I'm finally feeling that way for the first time in my life.
Well, that's incredible. That is something that I love that you have this because I feel like there's people in the world who go through their entire life where they stifle it down. So the ability to liberate yourself in such a way where you're like, you know what? This is what I want my life to look like going
Yeah.
forward. And
Yes.
the freedom,
Yes.
I'm so glad that this is on video too, because people can see it. The freedom that you feel, the lightness is
Yes.
apparent.
Definitely. Definitely.
And I love what you said. And I think we should go back and revisit it just a little bit about
Mm.
asking for help. And people feel like they're so strong that they can ask for help. But it's not sustainable. Like, you can only burn the candle at two ends for so long. And there's actually really empowering strength when you do ask for help from the
Yes.
right people, the right community, the
That
right
part.
support system.
The right people.
It's true because a
Yeah.
lot of truth be told, it's such a huge thing to be vulnerable. It's such a huge thing to share what it is you just shared with us. And in the wrong hands, asking for advice or feedback from people, sometimes it does more damage than good.
Definitely, especially with something like that, and that's why I do want to have these conversations because I think it's so important when you come to terms with trauma that you do or that you are surrounded by the right people. And again, you do not know who the right people are until you do the work to be honest with yourself and know yourself, because some of the decisions that I've made in my life that weren't positive, I know I made them now. Now I know that I did it from a mentality of a victim who had a fear of not being good enough. Because if you have that many abusers, you have multiple abusers, it's like, oh, what's wrong with me? And there's nothing wrong with that 7, 8 year old, 9 year old, whoever she was. There's nothing wrong with that kid. But
Absolutely not.
those circumstances will make you feel like you are not enough. And how do you know who to have around you if you don't even know yourself? And that's like, you cannot be a person of integrity and authenticity if you don't know yourself, if you're not honest with yourself. We see, I don't know what kind of point I was going to make there because you know me, I always have to say something wacky.
No, I think you hit the nail on the head in the fact where it's always going back to self. You're always traveling back to your most honest self
Yeah.
or what your truest self needed or needs, continue to needs. Because I think
Mhm.
we dilute ourselves as we get older because there's certain molds to fill. There's fear of disappointing people. I think especially as kids, how impressionable were you at 7 to 12? Do you know what I mean? I feel like I can't speak for you, but I feel like in that age range, you're looking for acceptance. You're looking to fit in. You're looking to do what all the cool kids are doing. You
Yeah.
don't want to stand out. You don't want to make noise. You don't want to be seen. You want to
Mhm.
blend in.
Mhm.
And I can't even imagine like what that translates to when you don't have the tools to deal with abuse or trauma or all these horrible things that nobody should have to go through, let alone a child.
And how many people have the ability to cope with that? Most people don't. And I'm grateful that my parents were amazing people and it was not their fault. And if it wasn't for them and how much they loved me, I could have been a completely different person with a completely different life. I would have probably been some crackhead or something. I don't know. I'm sorry if it was weird, but I don't want to offend crackheads. Maybe I need to cut that out.
Sayda.
Is that bad?
No, but it's true. Given the circumstances, given the tools, given the environment, you have no idea what your path would look like given different given what would the cake look like given different recipes, given different
Yeah.
ingredients.
Yep, absolutely. So gratitude. And it happens a lot. And that's the other thing. I want to give a voice to the fact that it happens a lot. It's still happening now. And we have to protect kids from predators. We do. But I don't want to digress down that road because that's a very, very fertile road. So I guess moving forward now, I don't guess, I know. Moving forward now, we want to call this next iteration for the doers, protect your peace. How do you protect your peace on a journey of authenticity and integrity, self-referral? I remember where that was a long time ago. I heard self-referral. I can't remember who it was. It was someone self-help, because I've read every self-help book written before 1999. But self-referral is something like I love Ralph Waldo Emerson. It is about you as an individual and self-reliance. Self-reliance is, to me, also one of the things that has gotten me to where I am, because my parents taught me self-reliance and I've cultivated that for myself. As a leader, I always promoted self-reliance, because you have to decide which box you want to put yourself into, if you want to be in a box. Because if you don't decide this for yourself, who you're going to be, someone else is going to decide for you. I'm not a person who likes anybody to make decisions for them in my life. I want to live the life that I'm here for. I want to live with purpose. And there are a lot of people like that. But what I want to know is, how do you protect your peace? How do you do that? How do you live and say, I am me? I am so proud to be me. And even though all of these blows are coming at me because I'm trying to be so strong, how do you do that? I think it's a good conversation to have now on, for me, a lot of the things, and I spoke about this in the past too, was finding the passions and following those passions to get me to that place. Because a lot of times you don't know what you want to do consciously, but inside you have all of the answers when you get quiet. And that's one of the hardest things now, right? Is getting quiet. And again, in the past, I spoke about when I was diagnosed in 2017 with clinical depression and a major depressive my first major depressive episode that was documented. I started meditating, and I'm very much ADHD, so I didn't think I could meditate, but had to ask for help at that time. That was when I was dipping my toes into asking for help, and started meditating, and that helped me so much to get to that quiet place that you have to get to. That's one of my things that I will always champion, is meditation, breath work. I even got to the point where I was able to facilitate that for other people. Breath work, not meditation. I do transcendental meditation. I cannot facilitate that. But it was
Dang it.
part
I was
of,
like, guide me through it. Let's
no,
go.
we're not. But I guess my point is that you have to, like that Martin Luther King quote, take the first step. Even if you don't know how, just take the first step. So that's what I did, was like, I need to try to calm down. What can I do? There's a transcendental meditation center in my neighborhood. Went there, it worked for me. became an aromatherapist, became an herbalist because I've been doing this my whole life, watching my mom do those things. And that's what I want to help other people to do is like, how do you find that peace for yourself and sharing whatever knowledge I have gained from practicing those things because it's made such a difference in my life and open doors that I never thought were possible without doing that work of how do I protect my peace? How do I find that space? How do I create my own habits that will help me stay grounded? How do I really look at myself and see what I need again with self-referral? So I think that's what I would like to do here with this conversation is how do we do that? There are some people that I know that I'm like, how are you doing all of this? I know what you've got going on at home. I know what you it's all of us that are professionals. Like, how are you doing this? And keeping your head above water and not treading water. I'm talking about how do you actually create peace in your life? What do you think?
Well, first and foremost, I think it's such a timely topic because, yes, we will always have all the internal things that we deal with and we're faced with every day to spend
Mhm.
time with ourselves. And I can only speak for myself. Sometimes it's really uncomfortable where you have to sit in the stillness or sit in the quiet where you really got to one, I think when you do the inward dive is do you like hanging out with yourself? That's kind of first and foremost. For me at least, it's like, okay, if there's tension there or you don't like to be alone with your thoughts, something's going on.
Mm.
So it's the curiosity. First, for me, it always starts with a curiosity thing where
Yeah.
you recognize there's little pieces of tension. Why is that happening? There's this
Mm.
pushback. But I also think that that aside, everything that's going on in our world,
Oh,
really, it's hard not to channel that stuff too. We're like sponges, where
yeah.
it's even inadvertently, like if you don't watch the news, people are talking about the news. If
Yeah.
you don't, you can't help but be immersed in all the things that are going on in the world.
Yep. And it's so much easier now. I went down and we even talked about this a couple of years ago on for the
Yeah.
doers, my social media rabbit hole because I think I'm just obsessed with what people spend their time with and how I live in the comments for specific subjects. Black Twitter doesn't count.
We're gonna have to find that episode where we're like, Sayda, we're deleting Twitter off your phone. You're like, if I ever feel down, I just jump onto Twitter for a little bit. I'm like, oh, here we go, everybody. Brace for impact.
Listen, and Twitter is a cesspool. I'm sorry, but it is a cesspool. But social media is not going anywhere. And that was another thing that I was thinking about too, is like I can also see how social media is impacting our mental health. And that's another thing that needs to be talked about because I see the difference from when I was super depressed, getting on social media all the time and just scrolling and scrolling because I didn't want to deal with pain in life. And wow, there's a lot of hurt people. And also, I was on being on TikTok. I think I'm on TikTok a little bit more than other things. Now I'm not on as much at all. And there's a difference. You can feel the difference because social media is just like the news. You are being manipulated. Rage bait is a thing. Doesn't matter how much you like that creator, at some point, if their numbers go down, they're going to do something probably to tick you off on purpose because they need to get those numbers back on up. They need to do something controversial. And so it doesn't matter how much you like them, it happens. They will do that because their mind is on their bag, not on your feelings. It's a business. And a lot of people make that mistake of not realizing that there are a lot of ulterior motives. It's not innocent.
Well, because listen, energy is currency also. Like your energy turns into time,
Yes.
turns into an
Yes.
investment into getting
Yes.
into the comments. And
Yes.
it's all part of a bigger, it sounds so conspiracy theorist, but like, it's such part of a bigger conversation of what are you trading your time for? What are you trading your energy for? Which is true. We all love it. I love the not mind numbing television or binge watching something. But at the same time, it's like you're doing, somebody had said, what are you trading your time for? If you were told you only have 5 hours,
Right.
what would you spend your time on? Would it be on something that matters to you? And then when you say it that way, I'm like, oh man, I just spent 5 hours not
It
doing
feels
something
like
that
this.
matters to me.
Exactly.
It's been 2 years since we've sat down and recorded it, which is wild.
Wow. I know. Wow.
The days feel long, but the years go by fast. And I
Yeah.
really do think like, that's why it's such an important conversation to have about protecting your peace because it's something that evolves with you.
Yes.
Like, how can you self soothe when the world is chattering away and everything is demanding your attention? It's your attention is currency now. How you spend your time, where your attention goes, what are you being pulled into? That being said, well, how would you even know to manage that within yourself? Oh, I need a pause. Like being able to self reflect and be like, oh, I need a pause. Or I'm getting really emotionally charged. I need to step away. How would you even begin to have those tools if you've only been in survivor mode?
That's what I mean. I'm coming out of survivor mode. But in this journey, and I know you're very similar, I want to learn how to not have to be in survivor mode because I have tools. Because I don't know, I think at this point in my life, my parents are both gone. I've even lost other people who are so important or have been so important to me in my life. You can't hurt me that way. You know what I'm saying? I've been through this grief, and that has given me tools because I think, again, who's around you? Who, like, I've told you this before, like, in my life, what I want around me is like, I want to be around, I want to have friends who are always happy to see me, and I'm happy to see them. Because you have those friends. If I'm on the phone with you, which I hardly ever get on the phone, let's just put that out there. But if I'm on the phone with you for an hour and I feel like crap afterwards, that's probably not going to happen. It's not going to happen anymore because I understand what you were saying about time. You don't know how much time you have left. I don't know how much time I even have with you. And to me, that's so much more important than getting on TikTok and getting angry about some bozo that is once again saying something crappy to get everybody's attention. I want to spend my time talking to you about the things that light us up. And it's not always perfect. Life isn't perfect, but I think that we have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable because I guess the simplest I can say is diamonds. They go through it. That coal goes
Pressure,
through it because
pressure.
it's the pressure. Pressure makes you better. And I'm not yet, I hope I get to that point of some of those people who are like, I look for problems. Not there. Not looking for any problems. They find me pretty well. But not being afraid of problems, of life throwing yet another curveball at you. Even as I'm speaking about this, like it just flashed into my mind. When was this? Early 2020, when one of my cousins called me and said, like, your dad can't be alone by himself anymore. This is happening. And I just freaked out. I literally was like, I don't know what to do. I have no idea what to do. I have a bunch of employees who I have to figure things out with now that we're in lockdown and my job. And now I have to figure out what? Now I have to take care of my dad physically? What the hell? That is like you can't stop those things from happening. This is what we signed up for when we came here. So again, I want to have these conversations because I know other people are going through this too. How do you go through it? And if anyone else is going through that right now, I would like to say, ask for help because the other thing is community. That's why I hightailed it right back to call you, because community is what helps us get through hard things too. You shouldn't always have to do things by yourself.
No, absolutely. And I think so much of this is like, like, oh, there's like tension that's happening because I'm like, oh, if I was listening to this while I was at a job that I hated,
Ooh,
where
a
you
lot of
have to like,
people.
no, it's true, where you have to protect your peace in an environment. So I'm like, let's role play this because it's like, what advice would you give somebody who's in an environment where they need a quick tip so that they don't one either fly off the handlebars or
Mm,
two burnout. It's such a hard place to be in where and been there in the past where I've been at a job where the leadership wasn't good at all. It was terrible. And I was like, "Oh my gosh, this career isn't for me." Or this path, this profession is not my profession. And how can you navigate that versus, oh no, it's a leadership problem. Oh no, it's a systems problem. It's not the
mhm.
profession itself. It's not what you're called to do and what you're passionate about. Maybe it's the environment. So,
Yeah.
how would you navigate that in a professional setting? Like if somebody was sitting at their office right now and they're like, holy beep, I need to protect my peace. What are some tips that you could start using right away that are building blocks?
I think the breathing, which I'll put some breathing techniques. I'll put a couple in the notes at the bottom. I've been in that situation more than once. And I think that when you are in that type of situation, I hate to say this, but you can only control what you can control. And this is where you have to understand that this is all about you. This is when it is all about you. This is when you are like, who am I? What have I accomplished? Because I think a lot of times we forget how great we are. We forget. Sometimes I have to, if I get really down, I look at my resume and I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Oh, you've done some things. Oh, hold on a second. Oh, you are not any little nothing. Like you are somebody. You've done a lot of things. You have great experience. And I think that that's the first thing you should do is be your own cheerleader. Sometimes you have to, especially if you're in any type of professional. And I think most of the people who we are speaking to are people who have careers and are again wanting to live their way authentically and have a purpose. And that is so difficult when you feel like that there's this whole wall in front of you because you have to make money. So, a lot of us to make money tell ourselves another story. And I know this is so easy for me to say, I don't have kids, blah, but I have come to a space where I'm like, this is not the environment for me. And sometimes that is the hardest truth for yourself because you're comfortable. Not saying that this goes for everybody. I'm just saying open your mind to other possibilities. Because another thing that happens to a lot of professionals is that we tell ourselves, well, I've spent so much time here. I've invested so much into this. So what? Is it your company? If it's not your company, you might want to find another road. That might not be the space for you. And if nothing changes and the leadership is not you're not aligned with the leadership, I've always said this, you are an independent contractor in life. You are an independent contractor. You decide to accept that job. You decide to accept whatever situation if you accepted a job and you didn't create those rules. So you have to figure out, can I live with this or can I not live with this? Is this aligned with my vision of how I want to live my life? I've been at companies where I'm like, well, this does not align with my values, so I can't be here. And it's the scariest thing you can do is whatever that job is that you're so proud of and everybody thinks is so great to say, I got to walk away from this because it's not aligned with my spirit.
I could see that being a very challenging but honest conversation to have with yourself,
Yes.
because so much of people's professions, especially if it's a long, you've done it for years or you've been at a company for years, so much of that is now interwoven with your identity
Yes.
that you're like, if I walk away from that, who am I outside of this company? Who
Yes.
am I outside of
Yes.
this? And I
Yes.
think that becomes a challenging thing. But in my heart of hearts, if it doesn't feel right, you can't keep pushing it down and like stifling it and be like, oh, it'll be fine.
Yeah.
Because at a certain point, you're just a shell of yourself showing up for what? A paycheck. And I don't want to discount it. Of course, we all have bills to pay, there are
Yep.
responsibilities that we
Yep.
have, but there are other options. I have friends that are happier working at a coffee shop than they were working making six figures at a corporation. And I'm not saying that that's the pathway for everyone. And
Hmm.
that might not even be realistic for some people and their lifestyles. But at a certain point, what's it all for? You're trading your life, your energy to what?
Wow. Because when you are in a situation, this goes for work or relationships or whatever, when you're in it, you can't always see that there are other pathways. And this is why being self-referral, I'm not going to move to Texas because my best friend said she's moving to Texas, and I'm not putting down Texas. I have friends in Texas. I'm just saying it doesn't align with me. I love living in Los Angeles. I love the weather. I love working here. I've worked in the same industry for over 20 years. That doesn't mean that it keeps me here, but I want to be in the space that keeps me close to my passions. But I went to Texas, it would be because I'm following something, or maybe I went for money for a job. I've been offered jobs all over the country, but I knew I couldn't live in certain places because I know myself. And that's my point. One of the reasons I wanted to have you speak a little bit about Ikigai, and I want to share that again because I think it's so important. It helped me also. That's another thing that helped also to find myself. And be clear, I am not perfect. I am on this journey exploring it, else. I'm not at grateful for my life. I love my life because I think you just have to learn how to. I think if you are being honest with yourself, then the gratitude and happiness gets easier because you're being grateful for real things. I don't know if that makes sense. Right? Like, I don't know if that makes sense, but I love Ikigai and I will always want to talk about that and champion it because, again, you cannot live your life clearly without knowing yourself and being honest with yourself. And tell us about Ikigai, please.
Oof. So I love this. It's like a simplistic, if you can kind of, as four circles intersecting. I think the traditional model is four circles, like a Venn diagram, four
Right.
circles overlapping. I like redesigned it to be like amoeba shapes because I feel like we can't just put our, again, we can't categorize everything. Nothing fits neatly into a circle. So
Mm-hmm.
it's four main categories. It's
Okay.
what you love, what you're good at, what the world needs, and what you can be rewarded for.
Ooh.
And the thought is at the very center of this overlapping amoeba is your ikigai, which translates in Japanese to your reason for being.
Mm.
Because in an ideal situation, that's what you would be doing. Like you what you do, you are so freaking good at it. The world needs it and you can be rewarded monetarily for it, or way you can be. But It would be like checking all the boxes, like this is the perfect place to be in. And I think going through the exercise is kind of wild because it changes. Like I've done this like of times and it as you shift because I mean we're growing
Yeah.
and I feel like our emphasis is not always in the same place at the same
Mhm.
time. Different seasons bring about different things. And I think it's really interesting when you're a doer or you're an entrepreneur or you're a builder to revisit this because you're still tapping back into yourself. And I'm
Mhm.
obsessed with people who want to build businesses that are extensions of themselves. Like the fact that you want to do this video, this podcast, like this back into the world, it's because something is happening internally that you then want to share with the world
Yeah.
that is going to help people and empower people and get them excited and feel like they have a friend in the game, you know? I think it's such a fun exercise. It's easy. It's like you even have to download the worksheet. Like I was kind of yourself, what am I freaking good at? What do I love to do?
Okay.
What does the world need now? So make it timely. And then what can you be rewarded for? Like whether it be consulting or speaking or sharing tips and tricks. Like we kind of granted what comes naturally to us.
Yeah.
You do every day. You're like, oh, I do what I do. But there is a special formula there that's just yours. And being able to even cut like for somebody else, that's of value to other people because now they have the TV guide version or they have the IKEA manual to construct something that they, didn't have the ability to do it. But you coming through it and you surviving every one of your bad days, like, and we all survived every single one of our bad days.
Yeah.
That in itself is so much value. Like the fact you can speak to this and you're so willing to share and be vulnerable and be brave to speak about all these things in the hopes that it's going to help somebody else. Like, holy moly. Like, there's words I wanted to insert there, but we're going to keep this episode clean.
We don't have to. I already have to edit out some of the stuff I said. I'm leaving this in.
It's so good. I mean, there's something, and we've spoken about it before, where there's been like, it's like a yearning or a calling, about it before, where there's this voice or a calling or something that you're meant to do or you're meant to
Mhm.
share it. There's a reason you literally just said it a few moments ago where you're
Yeah.
like, I don't know whose plan this was,
Yeah. I feel like
but we are.
eventually
You're like, I'm gonna headbutt you.
I'll get you one day. It comes again. Like I to this weird place at my big age of 54 today. I came to the realization it's like it's accepting everything as it is and moving forward that way. You know? So funny because my friend Ricky just said that to me, who was just here, and I hope he's listening. Just said to me, and that was so powerful to me because I always think of myself as trying to just be more realistic now because have to terms with things that I didn't want to accept. But when you do you just accept it. You just accept what has happened. And I've come to the other side again, not at the end of my journey at all, but when you come to the other side, all of those little boogaboos you thought you were afraid of are nothing. They're nothing. All those things you were afraid of, down because I didn't do this or, the one here now. Your life is about you. Why would I let somebody else take control of my life? And I've thought this way for a while. Again, probably mom and dad, but why would I let somebody else make my decisions for me on how I'm going to live? I always had that issue. I probably shouldn't say this, but corporate are incredibly challenging because people are not allowed to be themselves. And I understand the value of uniformity, but I also understand the value of a community building something together. And that's what work can be also, is allowing And that was my favorite thing also about building teams was like, oh, this person has these skills. And then this other person has these other skills. And that diversity and knowing that we're stronger that way. I think that's something that's in how we live our lives. Um, important, and so is community. And community to me is bigger than family because family is part of community. And that's why there's a lot of lack of kindness right now because it's all about me. Like driving in LA.
Too soon.
I know, right? All right. So I think we can start wrapping this up. I'm so grateful to be able to share this journey with you on, peace and living a life where you can cultivate your own happiness, your own success, because you can easily set those boundaries to protect this your head. This here, the last frontier. I would like to invite you. My call to you this week is check out the Ikigai worksheet. And like I said, you don't even have to print it out if you don't want to, but I'm going to do it and I will talk about it on the next episode. I'm going to redo it. I haven't done it for 4 years
Do
and
it.
so much has changed in my life. I'm so curious, how it changes for me because this podcast actually came out of doing those exercises and really naming my passions.
I think it's so, I mean, again, we so busy doing, we forget to pause and be like, what me joy back then, or what, as a kid, or what did I used to like to do, or
Mhm.
remember my first job, like what of that do I miss? Or I think just the revisiting of self
Mhm.
important.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're not a good meditator, it's a good exercise to like sit and be with yourself, right? Like if you're not good at like, I
Uh,
have to just sit here and like think of nothing. It's like, oh, if you want to sit and meditate on, what am I really good at? What do people call me for advice on? What, like those
mm,
things while you meditate? Because meditation doesn't have to look a certain way for every
no,
person.
no.
I think the stillness, like coming to what yourself and being with yourself, but just the inward curiosity and asking the questions and seeing where your mind goes. Like, so we should do this exercise and we should,
Let's
yeah,
both do it, and
let's
then
do
we're
it.
going to talk about it in the next episode.
Let's do it.
Yay, us.
Right. Accountability, guys, is huge. Action steps are huge.
Right? I'm not going to ask you to do anything I don't do. Thank you so much, Janice. I'm excited to do the Ikigai exercise again. I can't wait to talk about it next time. I'm so grateful to be back on the podcast. And again, thank you, Janice, for being here and your beautiful, bright, happy self and helping corral my thoughts.
No, it's the best. Like join the conversation, like leave
Yes.
comments, like send Sayda,
Yes.
send questions or things that have been on your mind or on your heart because it's so important. I think going into this too, we had spoke briefly before you hit record about having conversations about the things that we're going through. I think that's the biggest premise of this iteration of For the Doers. It's like
Yes.
the conversations
Yes.
because it's a no judgment zone. It's a space where it's like bring it to the table. If it's on
Yes.
your mind or on your heart, let's talk about it.
Please, if there are any questions that you have or want to get off your chest that you want us to talk about, we're so here for it. Um I'm a list of wonderful guests to have because we have lives to live. We have happiness to cultivate. Like that's all I can say is I want people to find that freedom and happiness that I have found in this last few months of this journey and just talking about it. Let's talk with each other, please. And I want to thank you. If you're listening to my voice right now, I want to thank you for taking the time to help. You are helping to build community, and I expect you to get involved. In better building community. I think if we really get together, we can absolutely make differences in the world. But it starts with us. All right.
Protect the peace.
Protect your peace, people. That's why we're here. And we're going to back you up. Thank you, everyone. And the last thing I want to say is please love yourself because you deserve it. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful and productive week. Protect your peace. And we will see you next week. Thank you so much. Enjoy yourself. Bye.